And today, I'm not going to be reviewing movies. You see, I'm going to be moving to Japan here in a little while, and I figured I have to start learning Japanese so that I can communicate. Just to be able to communicate even a little bit. So that means learning the bare basics for general communication, such as hello, how are you, good morning, good afternoon, thank you. Learn those things, but I'm going to learn it with Pimsleur. I've used Pimsleur before for Spanish, and I really wanted to get a decent foundation in conversational Japanese. And you have to start from somewhere, and Pimsleur is one of those language learning, not really apps, but language learning softwares that you can use to get that general, bare bones practice. So you don't really have to speak with anybody, but you can speak to yourself and have a decent conversation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump on Pimsleur right now. I have been doing it a little bit, but I haven't done it for 3 days. And to keep myself honest, I'm trying to do it on a daily basis for half an hour. So I'm going to be on this for half an hour. If you have any questions about it, feel free to put it in the chat, and I will stop what I'm doing to answer your question. So, I'm pretty sure I can't play this for copyright reasons, so I'm going to have it low to where I can hear it, but I'm still going to say everything out loud so that you can hear what it is. I'll even repeat some of the things that are being said, so if you don't know, or if you would like to learn Japanese yourself, and you just kind of want to get a feel for what it's all about with Pimsleur, I'm going to go ahead and just play the first portion of it so that you understand what you got to do and how it starts. And you can hear. Let me turn this fan off because it's really loud. Give me a second. All right, so now you just hear my fridge. So I'm going to start listening to this so that you can hear what's going on. And you'll hear the first portion of it, which just kind of tells you that this is a conversation. You're going to hear the conversation, and then we're going to start the actual phase 1 of it, which is going through and repeating after them what they're saying. So, without further ado, let me make sure I got some volume before I go any further.
This is Unit 1 of Pimsleur's
I don't know if you could hear it.
Japanese 1.
This is what it is.
Listen to this Japanese conversation.
すみません。英語がわかりますか？
いいえ、わかりません。日本語がわかりますか？
はい、少しわかります。
あなたはアメリカ人ですか？
はい、私はアメリカ人です。
In the next few minutes, you'll learn not only to understand this conversation, but to take part in it yourself. Imagine an American man sitting next to a Japanese woman. He wants to begin a conversation, so he says, "Excuse me."
すみません。
The Japanese speaker is going to
For
repeat
excuse
this
me,
word
it's
part by part,
sumimasen.
starting from
So if
the
you don't know
end.
it,
You are to repeat
sumimasen.
each part after him, trying to make your pronunciation sound exactly like his. Be sure you repeat aloud.
せん、
sen,
せん、
sem,
ません、
masen,
ません。
masen,
すみ、
sumi,
すみ、
sumi,
すみません。
sumimasen,
すみません。
sumimasen,
How do you say, excuse me, in Japanese?
sumimasen. That is excuse me.
すみません。
Sumimasen.
Now he wants to ask her if she understands English. First, the word English. Listen and repeat.
英語、
Ego. English. Ego.
英
A.
英語、
Ego.
How do you say English?
Ego. English. Ego. So here we go.
Now say English, adding the sound
が、
after it.
英語が。
英語が
By itself, the word for English is
英語
but
英語
when it is used in a sentence, as in, do you understand English? The
が
is added. Once again, say English as you would in a sentence.
英語が。
英語が
英語が。English as in a sentence.
が
英語が. Saying it by itself is just
英語
英語.
が
Learning together, guys.
Say, excuse me.
Excuse me is
すみません
sumimasen.
You should repeat after
Sumimasen.
the speaker gives the correct response, trying to make your pronunciation sound like
I'm going to
his.
say it a few times too.
すみません
Sumimasen. Like I'll say it before and after.
Say again, English.
Sumimasen. Eigo.
英語
Eigo is English.
英語
Eigo. And now I'm
Now
gonna
he
I'm
wants
gonna
to
take
ask,
off.
do you understand?
I'm gonna stop the sound because I don't want to get sued for copyright and stuff, as it always goes. But I'm still gonna say what is being said, and I'm gonna throw out the words and the definition so that you can hear it and repeat it yourself if you've never done it before, or if you don't understand Japanese. I personally don't understand that much Japanese. There's beginner level, and then there's sub-beginner level, and then there's doesn't know a damn thing. And I don't know a damn thing about Japanese. But this is level 1, lesson 1, Japanese from Pimsleur. So, we're all got a baseline. We're all at 1. So if you're interested, you can do this at yourself. Just listen. What I'm saying is basically what's on here, but you're not hearing the dude with the cool deep voice say it. I'm going to say it the best I know how. So, we're going to continue. I'm just going to put my headphones on, plug this up so I don't get sued. Let's go. Understand. Wakarimasu. It's going to be repeated part by part. Mas. Mas. Imas. I'm sorry, dimas. Gari. Garimas. Wakari. Wakarimasu. Wakarimasu. Understand is wakarimasu. Wakarimasu. Now, asking, do you understand in Japanese? Say understand and ka. Wakarimasu ka? Ka. Ka. Wakarimasu ka? What ka is basically a question mark. It's only used when asking questions. So, wakarimasu ka? Do you understand? Ka. Wakarimasu ka? Wakarimasu, understand. Wakarimasu ka? Do you understand? Wakarimasu ka? Wakarimasu ka? Wakarimasu ka? Do you understand? Excuse me. Sumimasen. Sumimasen. Excuse me. Ask, do you understand? Wakarimasu ka? Wakarimasu ka? Do you remember how to say English? Ego. In a sentence, ego ga. Ego ga. In a sentence. Ask, do you understand English? English, understand. Try it. Eigo ga wakarimasu ka? Eigo ga wakarimasu ka? Do you understand English? Eigo ga wakarimasu ka? Eigo ga wakarimasu ka? Do you understand English? Eigo ga wakarimasu ka? Eigo ga wakarimasu ka? Let's keep on moving. Say no. いいえ。いいえ。いいえ。No, I don't. いいえ。No. いいえ。No. Ask somebody, do you understand? わかりますか? 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 Do you understand English? 英語がわかりますか? 英語がわかりますか? Not too bad. 英語がわかりますか? Do you understand English? Person answers no. いいえ。いいえ。No. いいえ。Do you understand English? 英語がわかりますか? 英語がわかりますか? Say I understand. わかります。わかります。わかります。I understand. 英語がわかります。I understand English. I understand English. 英語がわかります。Do you understand? わかりますか? わかりますか? Pause here. Quick drink. Keep on moving. Say I understand. わかります。わかります。I understand. Say excuse me. すみません。すみません。Do you understand English? 英語がわかりますか? 英語がわかりますか? Do you understand English? 英語がわかりますか? The answer is no. いいえ。いいえ。I don't understand. Try this one. わかりません。わかりません。せん。せん。ません。わかり。わかりません。Kind of like わかります. Just add sen at the end. わかりません。わかりません。I don't understand. I don't understand. わかりません。わかりません。ません makes the statement negative. So, わかりません. Say understand and then don't understand. わかります understand. わかりません don't understand. わかります understand. わかりません don't understand. Sign language. わかりますわかりませんわかりません don't understand. Say English as if you're saying it in a sentence. 英語が two different ways. Say I don't understand English. 英語がわかりません。英語がわかりません。英語がわかりません。I don't understand English. 英語がわかりません。Say, do you understand? Ask. わかりますか? わかりますか? The KA is like a question mark. わかりますか? 英語がわかりますか? Do you understand English? 英語がわかりますか? Do you understand English? My eye is killing me. I don't understand. わかりません。わかりません。No, I don't understand. いいえ、わかります。わかりません。いいえ、わかりません。No, I don't understand. いいえ、No, わかりません。I don't understand. 英語がわかりません。 I don't understand English. 英語が again being English. 英語がわかりません. Do you understand? わかります。わかりますか? わかりますか? Answer, no, I don't understand. いいえ、わかりません. いいえ、わかりません. 英語がわかりません. I don't understand English. 英語がわかりません. A quick note, you're getting both sides of the conversation so that if you do ask a question to an actual person who speaks Japanese that doesn't understand English, at least you know what they're saying. You can also say, I only speak English, or I speak English better than I speak, anything else. That would be the preferred thing to say to somebody. For the purposes of this, you're getting both sides of the conversation. Do you speak Japanese? Yes, I do, or no, I don't. I don't speak Japanese. Do you speak English? That kind of stuff. You're basically learning a small conversation when you're doing Pimsleur. It's great as long as you're listening and learning at the same time. There's two big differences on listening and learning. You can listen and not hear, or you can listen and say it out loud, which is basically what you need to do when you're doing Pimsleur, because when you hear it and then you say it, you'll grasp it in your head. Which is the hope, and I'm trying to keep myself honest on this so that I'm going to be trying to stream this particular lesson a few times because I want to get better at Japanese. And if you're watching it and you want to learn Japanese, I'm hopefully giving you an idea of what to expect with the Pimsleur program. So I'm going to continue. That was just me letting you know where we're at. So moving on. Here we go. What's the name of the Japanese language? This is Japanese in Japanese. Nihongo. Nihongo. Japanese in Japanese. Nihongo. Ng. You'll hear it a couple of times. Kind of like in song. Nihongo. So you're going to do the same thing that you did with English when you're putting it in a sentence, because you said ego in a sentence. It's engo ga, but English by itself is engo. Ego. Ego. Ego ga. Right? So Japanese is no different. It goes like this. Nihongo, Japanese, but in a sentence it's Nihongo ga. Nihongo ga. Nihongo ga. Say you understand. Wakarimasu. Wakarimasu. Say I understand Japanese. Nihongo ga wakarimasu. Nihongo ga wakarimasu. Nihongo ga wakarimasu. Japanese, I understand. Nihongo ga wakarimasu. And then say it again. Nihongo ga wakarimasu. Now say you don't understand Japanese. Remember that sen at the end. Nihongo ga wakarimasen. Nihongo ga wakarimasen. Nihongo ga wakarimasen. Remember, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat and I'll answer. Say it again. I understand Japanese. Nihongo ga wakarimasu. Say excuse me. Sumimasen. Sumimasen. Excuse me. Say, do you understand Japanese? Nihongo ga wakarimasu ka? K at the end, implied question mark. Nihongo ga wakarimasu ka? Say a little. Sounds like this. Skoshi. Shi. We're gonna sound it out. Shi. Koshi. Skoshi. Sko. Shi. Skoshi. Say a little. 少し. Say I understand a little. It's going to be a little I understand. 少しわかります. 少しわかります. And a little I understand. 少し a little. 少しわかります. I understand a little. 少しわかります. Say I understand Japanese. 日本語がわかります. 日本語がわかります. Remember the NG in the middle? 日本語. 本語. 日本語が. 日本語がわかります. I understand a little Japanese. 日本語が少しわかります. Japanese a little understand is what you're saying. 日本語が少しわかります. Gonna keep on going. It goes about this fast too. 少しわかります. A little understand. 日本語が少しわかります. Japanese a little understand. Ask, do you understand? わかりますか? Ka. Say, do you understand English? 英語がわかりますか? 英語がわかりますか? Say, no, I don't understand. いいえ、わかりません. いいえ、わかりません. No, I don't understand. Say you understand Japanese a little bit. 日本語が少しわかります. 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 Just be aware, there's still 13 minutes left in this lesson. So after this, I'm going to get off the stream here, and I'm going to continue. I'm going to do this same lesson one more time. It's 30 minutes, and at the end of the lesson, it says if you get about 80%, you should go to the next lesson, because it's going to review what you learned in this lesson, but it's also going to teach you a few more phrases and words in the next lesson, and then it'll build on that one in lesson 3 and lesson 4 until you get this 5-pack lesson, right? In my case, I got Pimsleur on Audible, and you get, for every section, it's 5 lessons per section. So right now I'm on section 1, lesson 1, and that's what we're going off right now. So we're going to continue. 13 minutes left in this. If I don't stop 2-3 more, I'll probably stop 2 or 3 more times just to explain something, or maybe even give a little insight on the Pimsleur method. But at the end of this, I'm going to go ahead and play the intro, which tells you everything that you need to know about Pimsleur. And while that's going on, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of let you know I gain nothing from Pimsleur. I'm not affiliated with them. I just think that it's one of the better language learning applications or educational language learning softwares. All right, so we're going to go off of that. So 13 minutes left. Sorry, 13 and a half minutes. If I don't stop like 20, 30 more times. Here we go. I don't understand English. 英語がわかりません. 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 I don't understand English. Ask, do you understand Japanese? 日本語がわかりますか? 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 Do you understand Japanese? Say, no, I don't. いいえ。わかりません. いいえ、わかりません. No, I don't understand. Say you understand Japanese. 日本語がわかります. 日本語がわかります. Japanese, I understand. Understand Japanese. Now say, I understand Japanese a little. Nihongo ga wakarimasu. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. Nihongo ga skoshi Nihongo ga skoshi wakarimasu. Nihongo ga skoshi wakarimasu. Because skoshi means a little bit. Nihongo ga skoshi wakarimasu. The question, are you American? Here's American. America Jin. America Jin. 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 America Jin. America Jin. America Jin. America Jin. America Jin. Say American. America Jin. America Jin. Here's the word you used in a sentence. Anata wa. Anata wa. So we're going to say it backwards. Wa. Anata wa. Ta. Anata. Anata wa. Anata wa. You. You. Anata wa. So, anata wa means you. Here's am or are. Des. S. Des. Des. Or des. So let's go with des. D. Des. Des. Are. Des. Des. You are. Anata wa des. You are. Anata wa you are des. Anata wa des. You are. Anata wa des. You are American. You American are is how it's going to sound. So anata wa America Jin desu. America, I'm sorry. Anata wa America Jin desu. I can say it kind of fast. Anata wa America Jin desu. So, are you American? In Japanese, I and you are usually understood, but there are times when you need to say I or you to compare or contrast something. So we're going to go through you and I in Japanese for the purpose of nationality. So, are you American? Anata wa America Jin desu. Are you American? Anata wa America Jin desu. Ka is the question. Anata wa America Jin desu ka? Anata wa American Jin desu ka? Now we're going to say I. Watashi wa is I. I, watashi wa. Anata wa. Watashi wa. Anata wa. Watashi wa. Watashi wa. Anata wa. Watashi wa. Anata wa. Say am or are is des. Des. Say I am. Watashi wa desu. Watashi wa desu. Watashi wa desu. So now say I am American. You are American is like this. Statement. Statement. Anata wa America Jin desu. That's you are American. You are American is a statement. Now, answering I am American is Watashi wa America Jin desu. Wanata wa Watashi wa anata. Oh shit, I'm messing it up. Watashi wa America Jin desu. I am American. Now, asking the question, are you American? Anata wa America Jin desu ka? Because ka is a question mark. Anata wa America Jin desu ka? Now say excuse me again. How do you say that? Sumimasen. Sumimasen. Excuse me. Ask, do you understand Japanese? Nihongo ga wakarimasu ka? Nihongo ga wakarimasu ka? You raise your eyebrows. Right? Now ask, do you understand English? Engo ga wakarimasu ka? Engo ga wakarimasu ka? English, do you understand? Ask, are you American? Anata wa Amerikajin desu ka? Anata wa Amerikajin desu ka? Are you American? Anata wa Amerikajin desu ka? Now let's say yes in Japanese. Hai. Yes. Hai. Hai is yes. Ask, do you understand Japanese? Nihongo ga wakarimasu ka? Nihongo ga wakarimasu ka? Do you understand Japanese? Answer yes, a little. Hai, skoshi, a little. Skoshi, yes, a little. Hai, skoshi, skoshi. Say I understand Japanese a little. Nihongo ga skoshi wakarimasu. Ask, are you American? Anata wa Amerikajin desu ka? Anata wa Amerikajin desu ka? Say yes, I'm American. Hai. Watashi wa Amerikajin desu. Hai. Watashi wa Amerikajin desu. I'm sorry, desu. Hai. Watashi wa Amerikajin desu. I need to hear myself. This is not working. All right. So we're going to listen to this. This is the conversation at the beginning of the lesson with what you have learned, or what we both learned, or what we've all learned. I should say it like that. Let's listen to the conversation and see if we could follow it. And then following that, we're going to go through another conversation builder. Okay?
すみません。英語がわかりますか？
いいえ、わかりません。日本語がわかりますか？
はい、少しわかります。
あなたはアメリカ人ですか？
はい、私はアメリカ人です。
Listen to it again.
すみません。英語がわかりますか？
いいえ、わかりません。日本語がわかりますか？
はい、少しわかります。
あなたはアメリカ人ですか？
はい、私はアメリカ人です。
Now imagine that you are the person sitting next to the Japanese woman. You want to begin a conversation. What do you say?
すみません。
すみません。
Excuse me. Right?
すみません。
すみません. Excuse me.
She doesn't answer.
Doesn't
so try
answer.
asking her if she understands.
Ask if she understands. So what do you say? わかります。
わかりますか？
わかりますか? Because ka is a question mark.
わかりますか？
わかりますか? わかります is I understand.
Ask her if she understands Japanese.
Ask if she understands Japanese. 日本語がわかりますか?
日本語がわかりますか？
日本語がわかりますか?
日本語がわかりますか？
日本語がわかりますか?
Still no answer. Now ask her if she understands English.
英語がわかりますか?
英語がわかりますか？
英語がわかりますか?
英語がわかりますか？
英語がわかりますか?
いいえ。
いいえ means no.
How does she tell you that she doesn't?
いいえ。英語がわかりません。わかりません。
わかりません。
わかりません。英語がわかりません。
How does she ask you if you understand Japanese?
日本語がわかりますか?
日本語がわかりますか？
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 Answer that you understand a little.
少しわかります。
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 Answer, I understand Japanese a little.
日本語が少しわかります。
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 How does she ask you if you're American?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think it's あなたは、but
あなたはアメリカ人ですか？
あ、that's what it is. あなたはアメリカ人ですか？ Question mark K A.
あなたはアメリカ人ですか？
あなたはアメリカ人ですか？
Answer, yes.
はい。
はい。
Yes, I'm American.
はい。私はアメリカ人です。
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 She'll ask you a question. Try to answer it truthfully.
英語がわかりますか？
英語がわかりますか？ Do you speak English? はい。
はい。わかります。
わかります。I understand.
はい。英語がわかります。
はい。英語がわかります。I understand English.
英語がわかります。
英語がわかります。
She'll ask you another question. Answer it using the expression a little.
日本語がわかりますか？日本語がわかりますか？
日本語がわかりますか？
少し。
少し。
日本語が少しわかります。
日本語が少しわかります。
And that's true. Now you do understand Japanese a little. Don't be concerned if you've not made every response correctly. All that you've learned here will be reviewed in future units. If you've mastered about 80% of the material in this lesson, you're ready to move on to the next. Otherwise, you should invest another 30 minutes in doing this unit over again. This is the end of Unit 1. Pimsleur courses work most effectively when done consecutively and on a daily basis. For best results, please continue with the next unit tomorrow. This has been a presentation of Simon & Schuster Audio.
Okay. From that first lesson, we went from beginning to end, learned a few phrases that are going to be important if you're going to Japan or if you're going to be speaking Japanese with anybody. And it's the basics, you know. Do you speak Japanese? Do you speak English? Do you understand what I'm saying? Hello? I'm sorry, you haven't said hello yet. You learned yes and no, which is height and ie, right? You learned what am and are, which is des. Then you also got all of the forms of I understand, I don't understand, I do understand, do you understand, which is for I understand, it's just wakarimasu, right? And then it's do you understand, which is wakarimasu ka? Wakarimasu ka? I don't understand, wakarimasen. And then what did I say? Oh, for the languages, you got Japanese, which is nihongo ga. Nihongo, if you're not saying it in a sentence. And if you're saying it in a sentence, then it's nihongo ga. English is ego, or engo, E-N-G-O, engo. If you're saying it in a sentence, it's engo ga. And I, watashi wa, and you, anata wa. So, you got a pretty good vocabulary there. And that's just the first section of this. And now you're going to build on it with lesson 2, which you're going to learn, you're going to review what you learned in lesson 1, plus you're going to add like 4 or 5 more vocabulary words and a couple of more sentences, maybe 3 or 4 more sentences. And you're going to get the idea of how this language works. So really you're not learning the grammatical way of speaking it, but you get the idea of the word order. And that's what is paramount when you're learning any language. Knowing what order to put the words is what you're trying to accomplish in the first place. Because if you don't know what the hell you're doing or how to put the words together, then you're not really learning anything. So as promised, we're going to go through, I'm going to go ahead and play what the introduction of Pimsleur is for people who don't understand the conception of it. I'm not going to say anything. I might say one or two things just because I really like this program. It's no Duolingo, right? So here we go.
Simon & Schuster's Pimsleur Language Programs User's Guide. Congratulations. You have just purchased the most effective language program ever developed. As you probably know, learning a new language can be frustrating. Your first experience with a foreign language may have been in school. If the classes seemed difficult or if your grades were poor, you probably believed you had no aptitude for languages. Even if you did well, you may have been surprised later to discover that what you learned was of little or no use when you tried to converse with native speakers. Perhaps you waited until later in life and tried adult education classes, language schools, or home training programs.
Yep.
There, too, you may have found the information hard to retain, the lessons tedious, and your progress slow. Many language students...
The reason for that is it's mostly vocabulary and grammar first, which is totally backwards from how you should be learning a language. But for most cases, people learn better when conversing, because a baby doesn't learn that way. A baby doesn't learn grammar. A baby learns words and then puts those words together to form sentences. That's basically what this is about. So let's continue.
Give up early in these programs, convinced that they lack the natural ability to understand and use what they read and hear. The truth is that anyone can acquire a foreign language with the right teaching system. With the Pimsleur method, you will benefit from the years of research and development that have helped create the world's most effective method for teaching foreign languages. The Pimsleur language programs, developed by Dr. Paul Pimsleur, fill an urgent need for self-instructional materials in many languages. How to use the program. To get the full benefit of each lesson, choose a quiet place where you can practice without interruption, and a time of day when your mind is most alert and your body least fatigued. The length of each lesson, just around 30 minutes, is that recommended by teaching specialists for a concentrated learning task. Once you've started the program, simply follow the tutor's instructions. The most important instruction is to respond aloud when the tutor tells you to do so. There will be a pause.
Highly important, because if you're just listening to it and not speaking, then you're not really getting the full breadth of the words that you're supposedly learning or trying to acquire, right? So knowing how to say what you're hearing is much more important, because you don't want to sound like you're from the South. If you're from the South, you want to sound like a native speaker, which really is you're just trying to learn the language so that you can sound like you truly understand how the language is supposed to be spoken. Yes. So here we go.
After this instruction, giving you time to reply. It is essential to your progress that you speak out in a normal conversational voice when asked to respond. Your active participation in thinking and speaking is required for your success in mastering this course.
Yep.
The simple test for mastery is whether you are able to respond quickly and accurately when your tutor asks a question. If you are responding correctly about 80% of the time, then you're ready to proceed to the next lesson. It is important to keep moving forward, and also not to set unreasonable standards of perfection that will keep you from progressing, which is why we recommend using the 80% figure as a guide. You'll notice that each lesson contains both new and familiar material, and just when you may be worrying about forgetting something, you will conveniently be reminded of it. Another helpful feature of the Pimsleur language program is its rate of saturation. You will be responding many times in the half hour. This saturation enables you to make substantial progress.
Would you agree that first lesson had a lot of me just speaking and talking, mostly because I wanted you to know what was being said, but I also needed to hear it as clear as possible. So I needed to hear, speak, and I also tried to convey as best as I could to you, the audience, what was being said in my ears. So let's continue.
Within a short period of time. Guidelines for success. Complete the lesson units in strict consecutive order. In other words, don't skip around. Also, do no more than one lesson per day, although the lesson unit for the day may be repeated more than once. Daily contact with the language is critical to successful learning. Listen carefully to each lesson unit. Always follow the directions of the instructor. Speak out loud when directed by the tutor, and answer questions within the pauses provided. It is not enough to just silently think of the answer to the question asked. You need to speak the answer out loud to set up a circuit of the language you are learning to speak, so that it is heard and identified through your ears, to help establish the sounds of the target language. Do this prior to hearing the confirmation, which is provided as reinforcement as well as additional speech training. Do all required activities according to the instructions, without reference to any outside person's book or course. Do not have a paper and pen nearby during the lessons, and do not refer to dictionaries or
Hear that? Don't write shit down. Just listen to it, speak it so that you can get it in your head. Because if you write it down, you're going to write it down phonetically. And you're going to get it wrong every time you read it. So just listen and speak. And do that for 30 minutes a day, one lesson a day. If you need to do the same lesson twice, don't go to the next one until you're done. Until you're 80% on that one lesson that you're on. In my case, I'm going to do this one more time, and then I'm going to move to lesson 2, and we'll do that tomorrow.
books. The Pimsleur method works with the language learning portion of your brain, requiring language to be processed in its spoken form. Not only will you interrupt the learning process if you attempt to write the words that you hear, but you will also begin to speak the target language with an American accent. This is because the sounds represented by the American letters are different from the same-looking letters from the foreign language. Dr. Paul Pimsleur and his unique method. Dr. Paul Pimsleur devoted his life to language teaching and testing, and was one of the world's leading experts in applied linguistics. He was fluent in French, good in German, and had a working knowledge of Italian, Russian, modern Greek, and Mandarin Chinese. After obtaining his PhD in French and a master's in psychology from Columbia University, he taught French phonetics and linguistics at UCLA. He later became professor of Romance languages and language education, and director of the Listening Center, a statewide language lab at The Ohio State University. Professor of Education and Romance Languages at the State University of New York at Albany, and a Fulbright lecturer at the University of Heidelberg. He did research on the psychology of language learning, and in 1969 was section head of psychology of second language learning at the International Congress of Applied Linguistics. Dr. Pimsleur was a member of the American Association of Teachers of French, American Educational Research Association, Modern Language Association, and a founding member of the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages. His many books and articles revolutionized theories of language learning and teaching. After years of experience and research, Dr. Pimsleur developed a new method that is based on two key principles: the principle of anticipation and a scientific principle of memory training that he called graduated interval recall. This method has been applied to the many levels and languages of the Pimsleur programs. Graduated interval recall. Graduated interval recall is a complex name for a very simple theory about memory. No aspect of learning a foreign language is more important than memory. Yet before Dr. Pimsleur, no one had explored more effective ways for building language memory. In his research, Dr. Pimsleur discovered how long students remembered new information, and at what intervals they needed to be reminded of it. If reminded too soon or too late, they failed to retain the information. This discovery enabled him to create a schedule of exactly when and how the information should be reintroduced. Suppose you have learned a new word. You tell yourself to remember it. However, after 5 minutes, you're unable to recall it. If you'd been reminded of it after 5 seconds, you probably would have remembered it for maybe a minute, at which time you would have needed another reminder. Each time you are reminded, you remember the word longer than you did the time before. The intervals between reminders become longer and longer, until you eventually remember the word without being reminded at all. This program is carefully designed to remind you of new information at the exact intervals where maximum retention takes place. Each time your memory begins to fade, you will be asked to recall the word. The principle of anticipation. The principle of anticipation requires you to anticipate a correct answer. Practically, what this means is that you must retrieve the answer from what you have learned earlier in the course. It works by posing a question, asking you to provide a new sentence, using information you've learned previously, and putting it into a new combination. This provides novelty and excitement, which accelerates learning. Before Dr. Pimsleur created his teaching method, language courses were based on the principle of mindless repetition. Teachers drummed words into the students' minds over and over, as if there were grooves in the mind that could be worn deeper with repetition. Neurophysiologists tell us, however, that on the contrary, simple and unchallenging repetition has a hypnotic, even dulling effect on the learning process. Eventually, the words being repeated will lose their meaning. Dr. Pimsleur discovered that learning accelerates when there is an input-output system of interaction in which students receive information and then are asked to retrieve and use it. Core vocabulary. While graduated interval recall and the principle of anticipation are the foundation of the Pimsleur method, there are other aspects that contribute to its uniqueness and effectiveness. One involves vocabulary. We have all been intimidated when approaching a new language by the sheer immensity of the number of new words we must learn. But extensive research has shown that we actually need a comparatively limited number of words to be able to communicate effectively in any language. Language can be divided into two distinct categories: grammatical structures, or function words, and concrete vocabulary, or content words. By focusing on the former category and enabling the student to comprehend and employ the structure of the new language, Dr. Pimsleur found that language learners were able to more readily put new knowledge to use. There are few content words that must be known and used every day. The essential core of a language involves function words, which tend to relate to human activities. This course is designed to teach you to understand and to speak the essential elements of your new language in a relatively short time. During each half-hour lesson, you will actually converse with two native speakers, using the level of language spoken by educated citizens in their everyday business and social life. The program's unique method of presenting dialogue in situation relieves you of the most common learning problem, the problem of meaning. Organic learning. The Pimsleur method centers on teaching functional mastery in understanding and speaking a language in the most effective and efficient way possible. You will be working on your vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation in an integrated manner as you are learning specific phrases that have practical use in everyday activities. There are several thousand languages in the world. Because fewer than 500 of these languages have developed formal systems of writing, linguistic specialists accept that language is primarily speech. For this reason, it is also accepted that the human brain acquires language as speech. Therefore, when Dr. Pimsleur created his language programs, he began teaching with recorded materials, which enabled the learners to acquire the sounds, the rhythm, and the intonation of the target language. The learners did this more rapidly, more accurately, and with great enthusiasm, because they found themselves capable of almost instant beginning communication skills. Dr. Pimsleur called this organic learning because it involves learning on several fronts at the same time. His system enables the learner to acquire grammatical usage, vocabulary, and the sounds of the language in an integrated, exciting way. In short, the learner gains the language as a living, expressive form of human culture. Course content. When you have mastered a Pimsleur language program, you will have a highly practical, everyday vocabulary at your command. These basic words, phrases, and sentences have been carefully selected to be the most useful in everyday situations when you visit a foreign country. You will be able to handle social encounters graciously, converse with native speakers in travel situations, and use transportation systems with confidence. You'll be able to ask for directions and to navigate your own way around the cities and countryside. The language skills you learn will enable you to participate in casual conversations, express facts, give instructions, and describe current, past, and future activities. You will be able to deal with everyday survival topics and courtesy requirements. You will be intelligible to native speakers of the language, even to those who are not used to dealing with foreigners. What is equally important is that you will know how to ask the kinds of questions that will further expand your knowledge of and facility with the language, because you will have been trained by the Pimsleur open-ended questioning technique. The Pimsleur method becomes a springboard for further learning and growth to take place, the ultimate purpose of any real educational system. This desire to learn will be apparent to the people with whom you speak. It will indicate sincere interest in and respect for their culture. A note on regional language differences. In any large country, and even in many smaller countries, regional differences in language are common. In the United States, for example, a person from Maine can sound very different than someone from Texas. Pronunciations and accents vary, and there are also minor differences in vocabulary. For example, what is called a drinking fountain in New York or Arizona is known as a bubbler in Wisconsin, and a soft drink in one part of America will be called a soda elsewhere. The differences in English are even more distinct between North Americans and Britons, and between Britons and Australians. But all are native speakers of English. All can communicate with spoken English, read the same newspapers, and watch the same television programs, essentially without difficulty. Native speakers of a language can often tell where someone is from by listening to him or her speak. In addition to regional differences, there are social differences. Pimsleur language programs use a standard, educated speech. which will generally carry you throughout the country without difficulty. This has been a presentation of Simon & Schuster Audio. Copyright.
All right. So now you kind of get what the Pimsleur method is all about. And that's pretty much the down low. So since we're on this track right now, let's go ahead and do something that was discussed in there. We're going to go ahead and go over some of the vocabulary we learned. So let's go with I. How do you say I in Japanese? Watashi wa. Watashi wa is I. You. Anata wa. Anata wa is you, I, and watashi wa. Excuse me. Sumimasen. Sumimasen is excuse me. How do you say a little? Skoshi. Skoshi. How do you say understand? I understand. Wakarimasu. Now, if you're asking somebody if they understand, like, do you understand? Wakarimasu ka? If they don't understand, they're going to say wakarimasen. So now, let's go through that a different way. How do you say Japanese? Nihongo. If you're saying it in a sentence, you say it Nihongo ga. Nihongo ga. So, say I understand Japanese. Nihongo ga wakarimasu. I understand a little Japanese. Nihongo ga skoshi wakarimasu. Or, I don't understand Japanese. Nihongo ga wakarimasen. Now, English. Engo ga. Or engo, if you're saying it just by itself. Engo. If you're saying it in a sentence, it's engo ga. Engo ga. I understand English. Engo ga wakarimasu. I don't understand English. Engo ga wakarimasen. Do you understand English? Engo ga wakarimasu ka? I understand a little bit of English. Engo ga skoshi wakarimasu. Yeah, there's a couple more in there. Oh, des. What is des? Am or are. So, we also discussed American. How do you say American? America-jin. America-jin. I am American. Watashi wa, I. Watashi wa America-jin desu. Are you American? And what do we say a question mark is? Ka, right? K-A, ka at the end. So, I am oh wait, are you American? What's you again? Anata wa, right? So, anata wa America-jin desu ka? Anata wa America-jin desu ka? Are you American? But we pretty much covered a lot of it. So if you actually have got a chance to absorb any of this with that 30-minute lesson, then you did pretty good. And I think you should move to lesson 2. So I'm going to go through this lesson one more time when I get off of this stream. And then I'm going to go ahead and do lesson 2 tomorrow, which is pretty much the plan. I'm trying to keep myself at 30 minutes a day, every day. And I'll take a day off, but I don't know what day that's going to be yet. So let's just hope for tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. What do you say? I think it's a good idea. So to keep myself honest and on track, I'm going to try and jump on this 30 minutes a day, between 30 and 45 minutes a day. We'll do the same program, but lesson 2. So we learned basic Japanese right now, and we'll go through and learn a little more basic Japanese. So if you learned anything, fantastic. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Send me a note or a message anywhere. I'll answer it if I can. And, thank you for joining me. And I hope you learned something, because I learned something. And maybe the next time we'll learn sign language after this. Because, let's face it, I don't like talking. So, thank you for joining me. And now I'll see you next time I see you. Happy learning.